My ex was 10 times more of a man than you, and you'll never leave me. I don't even have to try. My wife laughed that night at dinner. So, I just quietly vanished, hired the most ruthless divorce lawyer I could find, and watched her entire life start to unravel. My ex was 10 times the man you'll ever be. That line, delivered with a smug, slightly alcohol-slurred chuckle, hung over the dining room table like a carelessly pulled pin on a grenade. Her wine glass tapped softly against the plate, a self-satisfied smirk fixed on her face, as if she'd just proclaimed a universal, undeniable truth and was waiting for a standing ovation. I didn't react. I didn't even flinch. I just set my fork down slowly, with unnerving care. Then I stood up, went to the hallway, pulled on my jacket, and took my keys. There was no confrontation, no slamming doors, no hurled insults. Just the soft click of my boots echoing against the floor as I walked away from the wreckage of the last 6 years, enveloped in absolute silence. I genuinely don't believe she even looked up. Maybe she assumed I was just going to the corner store. Perhaps she thought I'd drive around the neighborhood like a wounded animal, a kicked puppy waiting for her to signal my return. That was the familiar pattern, her usual script. She always relied on that final manipulative card, the one designed to induce my guilt. The heavy, passive-aggressive silence she used like a weapon after her verbal storms, the dramatic sigh, the low-muttered slights as she turned away. She never once expected a true silence, the kind of profound stillness that signifies you are unequivocally finished. For those still listening to this point, if this story strikes a chord deep in your gut, please know you are not alone. Over 90% of people view these videos without subscribing. But if you've ever found yourself walking out that door for the last time, if this narrative truly resonates with you, take a second to subscribe. It helps us understand that these stories matter. It keeps this team going. Now, let's get back to what happened next. I didn't end up crashing on a friend's couch or checking into some roadside motel. I drove straight to a very specific location, a suite on the 14th floor of the downtown Marriott, room 1422. This wasn't just a hotel room. It was my new operations center. I had considered this possibility before. Not because of that particular insult, of course. That acid-tongued remark was fresh from her tequila-laced mouth. But I had prepared for the eventuality, the inevitable breaking point. I had recognized for quite some time that we were slowly being buried under layers of her casual contempt. It just took that one final sentence to scrape away the last bit of dirt covering the truth. Her ex, the man she so happily compared me to, had relocated to Austin years prior. He was a real estate broker, a flashy spender who boasted incessantly about his stakes and his Teslas. He was also a serial cheat and a masterful liar. He even kept a second phone. I knew these things not because she ever admitted them. She was never honest about her past, but because I heard them from a far more reliable source. That source was someone I met serendipitously at a professional conference in Denver 2 years earlier. Her name was Victoria, and Victoria was no mere conference attendee. She was his wife. At the time, I had absolutely no idea. She casually mentioned his name, Brent, and I simply stored it in the back of my mind. Later that evening, I saw her again in the hotel bar, and we just talked. We didn't flirt, we genuinely conversed. She brought up being married to a lost cause with a serious God complex, and suddenly, everything clicked into place. We shared a quiet laugh, not really at him, but at ourselves, at being the kind of partners who are constantly left to clean up other people's emotional and financial messes. I mentioned my work in cybersecurity. She informed me she was a divorce attorney, but not just any lawyer. She was a specialist in asset protection, post-nuptial agreements, financial privacy shields, and isolation techniques. She was the expert a hedge fund manager calls before getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar. We never exchanged numbers back then, but we definitely remembered each other. So, when I left that dinner table and her voice echoed in my mind, drunk on wine, smiling triumphantly, throwing her ex in my face, I didn't think of him at all. I thought of her. I pulled into a gas station, sat in the car, and dug through my old emails, buried deep in a forgotten inbox linked to one of my side companies. There it was, a link to a panel recording from that Denver conference, which she had forwarded with a brief, powerful note. If you ever need to protect yourself, call me. I'm not just a lawyer. I'm an escape plan. I allowed myself a genuine smile for the first time in what felt like forever. But now, I wasn't just escaping. I was taking a calculated position. At the Marriott, I paid with a preloaded disposable debit card from a secondary business, ensuring no digital trail led back to me. I checked in using the name of an old college roommate who had sadly passed away 5 years before. The desk clerk didn't even hesitate. I went up to the room, shed my coat, and sat down. No lights on, no television, just the city glow filtering through the blinds and the muted hum of the distance I had finally created between myself and the life I was weary of pretending to be part of. My phone vibrated. It wasn't her. It would never be her. She was far too proud to call. The message was from someone else entirely. Victoria. A simple text, no niceties. If you're ready, I can meet you at the bar in 20. I've already pulled her credit reports. I didn't need to ask how she knew I was ready. She always knew. I changed into a dark blazer, headed down the hall, and took the elevator. I caught a faint scent of expensive, clean, unapologetically dominant perfume before I even saw her. She was seated alone at a small table near the back wall, an open folder resting beside a glass of something neat. She didn't smile when I approached. Instead, she just slid the folder across the table toward me. Inside were detailed asset maps, a draft of a divorce petition, and 3 letters addressed to different banks, instantly requesting the freezing of all joint accounts based on suspicions of financial misrepresentation. Then she looked up, meeting my eyes, and said something I will never forget. I don't want to ruin her. I want to render her powerless. When this is finished, she'll have no weapons left to use. And right there, in that moment, something inside me finally clicked into place. It wasn't about vengeance or rage anymore. It was about pure, cold precision. She sat with her back to the piano, her gaze calmly sweeping the room, like someone who was intimately familiar with threats but utterly unfazed by them. Even the way she held her drink, her left hand loose around the base, her index finger gently tapping the rim, felt less casual and more controlled, completely calculated. This wasn't just some woman enjoying a drink alone. This was someone who had buried high-profile reputations under ironclad non-disclosure agreements and walked away without a single wrinkle in her blouse. I took the seat opposite her. No greetings, no false pleasantries. She slid a fresh manila folder onto the low marble table. No words, just a look of measured composure. I opened it. The first page was a draft of a divorce petition that cited strategic marital misrepresentation, whatever convoluted legal meaning that held. The pages that followed were far more devastating. Bank statements I hadn't seen in months. Somehow, she had already obtained the ones my wife had insisted on keeping private. The just-in-case accounts, linked to some business venture I never trusted, were all hidden under limited liability companies registered out in Arizona. A creative move, and technically illegal if executed sloppily, which, naturally, my wife had done. Then came the color-coded diagrams, the fund traces, the cash transfers, withdrawals, and even purchases from luxury boutiques. A designer handbag she had claimed was a client gift, paid for directly out of our joint travel fund. A spa weekend with her sister, booked under the guise of a trauma bonding retreat, which had 0 receipts and a very real charge on our shared credit card. This is the groundwork, Victoria stated, her voice like velvet laid over a scalpel's edge. We won't make a move yet. We wait. Then, we push the first domino. I looked up, confused. Why help me? Because she used to laugh when she cheated, Victoria answered simply. I recognized the pattern immediately. I used to sleep next to it. There it was. I didn't need to speak his name. Brent. Her husband. My wife's supposedly superior ex. The one she had the nerve to bring up over pork tenderloin, as if it were harmless dinner conversation. The same man who once paraded other women through their apartment while Victoria was away. The one who had locked her out of their joint account the night before her rent was due, then cruelly texted, "Bet your new boyfriend can't fix that." I closed the folder, leaning back against the leather seat. What is it you want in return? She tilted her head slightly. Nothing from you. But I do want her to experience the crushing weight of real consequences. Not anger. Not tears. Silence. Isolation. Complete financial suspension. Strategic suffocation. We aren't going to defeat her in court. We are going to completely dismantle her before she ever sets foot in one. A waiter approached. I didn't order anything. She requested water, but never touched the glass. Once the waiter left, she pulled another document from her expensive leather bag. It was a list of names. My eyes quickly scanned it. I recognized 2 mutual friends, her old Pilates instructor, and a real estate agent she swore she hadn't spoken to in years. What is this? Witnesses. People who owe me favors, or people she owes apologies to, she corrected. Either way, they will cooperate fully. I don't actually want to humiliate her, I admitted, half-truthfully. Victoria offered the faintest of smiles. You won't have to. You simply need to step aside and let her own poor decisions do it for you. The folder also contained an intensely detailed timeline, broken down to the day, showing exactly how the next 8 weeks would unfold. It mapped everything, from the moment I disappeared to the freezing of her accounts and the preemptive subpoena for her private therapist's notes, just in case she tried to leverage mental health as a weapon in the divorce, a move Victoria was certain her patterns indicated. Even the public relations email for mutual friends was pre-written, calm, professional, clinical. I closed the folder again. How much of this did you already have prepared before I even texted you? She gave one short, dry laugh. Cord, I've been watching her for 2 years. Ever since she tried to contact Brent again, right around our anniversary. My gut clenched. Did she not know we were married? I asked, watching her sip her water. Oh, she knew. She just didn't care. She's lazy, reckless, and she assumed I was an ordinary woman, someone she didn't need to notice. That is her ultimate fatal flaw. She believes she's special because she has always been given the benefit of the doubt. I rubbed the bridge of my nose, taking in the full scope of the information. You're genuinely terrifying, you know that. She shrugged. That's what my ex said, right before I took the Mercedes, the apartment, and his weekend cabin in Tahoe, without saying a single word in court. She stood up, gathered the folders, and slid them back into her bag. Let me know when you're ready for phase 2. Until then, enjoy the silence. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving behind only the glass of water and the subtle, potent scent of power disguised as perfume. I remained seated for a long time, surrounded by the clinking glasses, the laughter, and the music. It all felt like a world I no longer inhabited. Outside the window, I watched people stumble out of a company holiday party, oblivious, alive, and drunk. For the first time in years, I wasn't confused, angry, or sad. I was simply ready. The hotel's glass doors made a soft hiss as I stepped out into the humid night air, the kind of air that clings to your skin like deep regret. I was halfway down the wide marble steps, still hearing Victoria's surgical, chillingly calm voice in my head, when I heard the distinct click-clack of heels behind me, fast and slightly uneven. Wait. Hey, wait up. I turned just enough to confirm the suspicion my gut already held. It was her younger sister, Tissa. Tissa, the one who always made light jokes about how well we balanced each other as a couple. Tissa, who used to take a strategic step back when the insults started flying at family gatherings. Tissa, who once pulled me into the hallway during a Christmas party and quietly advised, "You deserve better, but since I know you won't leave, just try to stay sane." She looked completely different now. The bubbly laugh was gone. She wasn't holding her phone, no shield against real emotion. Just wide, bare-shouldered vulnerability, and an expression suggesting she'd just witnessed a ghost materialize from her worst nightmare. She didn't use my name. She just glanced past my shoulder at the doors I'd just exited. She swallowed hard. That was Victoria, wasn't it? I gave no response. She took a step closer, her heels striking the marble with a frantic rhythm that was far too fast for someone trying to appear casual. "I know who she is," Tissa whispered, nervously looking around as if someone might be recording our exchange. "Why would she be here with you?" Silence. Her eyes drifted to my coat pocket, where the edge of the folder was barely visible. I had intended to tuck it in further. It didn't matter now. She moved closer still. "Please, don't do this. You know my sister. She says things when she drinks. She doesn't mean them. Half the time, she doesn't even remember what she said." I finally looked at her, not with cruelty, but like a stranger trying to place a familiar face from a dream he had already forgotten. Tissa's voice dropped to a tight, desperate whisper. "She is not ready for someone like Victoria. Nobody is." That woman dismantled a judge. A sitting judge. My old boss still won't say her name out loud. A car horn blared across the street. A group of tourists cheered about something utterly irrelevant, but Tissa was focused only on me, trembling slightly. She reached out, as if to touch my arm, then wisely pulled her hand back. "She truly doesn't know what she's walking into," she reiterated. "You don't have to launch the nuclear option. You can still back out of this." That last line was the pivot point. If she had said, "You can still fix it," I might have wavered. I might have entertained the faint flicker of residual guilt I was actively trying to ignore. But she didn't say, "Fix it." She said, "Back out." As if everything, the marriage, the insult, my quiet departure, had all been a cheap performance that I could simply delete before too many people noticed. It was then that I truly understood Tissa wasn't just worried about her sister. She was absolutely terrified for all of them. She had seen Victoria in action before. She knew exactly what it meant when Victoria showed up, folder in hand, eyes dry, completely calm, and 3 strategic moves ahead of everyone else. This wasn't a lawyer you casually retained. This was a controlled, surgical detonation you deliberately unleashed. I walked past her without a word. She followed for a few feet, her heels clattering frantically, her breathing catching as if she were wrestling with whether to scream at me in the entrance of a luxury hotel. She didn't. I reached the sidewalk. Behind me, I could still hear her ragged, desperate breathing, but I didn't turn around. I continued walking toward the parking garage, the folder tucked under my arm like a loaded gun that no one could see, but whose impact everyone would soon feel. "Tell me you're not serious," she finally shouted after me, her voice breaking at the end, confirming she already knew the answer. I kept walking. Let her tell my wife. Let the cold dread begin to spread early. My wife called me on Monday. Twice. The first time was mid-morning. She probably expected me to be at my office, still sulking, licking my wounds like a good, obedient, thoroughly disappointing husband. The second call came closer to lunchtime. I ignored both, letting her voice drift off into voicemail purgatory. I imagined her pacing our kitchen, checking the clock, wondering if I was dragging this out for dramatic effect, likely assuming I'd come crawling back with flowers, apologies, and some rehearsed speech about needing space. She had always been convinced that she controlled the entire emotional rhythm of our lives. On Tuesday, she sent a text, "Can we talk like adults?" I didn't reply. I was preoccupied with watching a courier check his clipboard and step onto an elevator in her office building. It was a 27-story glass tower downtown, packed with brand reps, designers, and inflated egos all pretending to be humble creative types. I was in the middle of a video call when the building's receptionist buzzed her floor. The courier didn't flinch as she signed for the large envelope with a dramatic sigh, acting as if she were being served a parking ticket. Then she opened it. The initial divorce papers. They were formal, cold, and utterly devoid of emotion or anger. Just coldly, surgically organized. She didn't even try to hide her reaction. One of her co-workers later described it as a dismissive snort laugh. "Look what my idiot husband is doing now," she'd announced loudly, waving the pages. "Filing papers because he can't take a simple joke." The room chuckled along with her, until she saw the name of the representing attorney. At the bottom of page 2, section 5, Victoria S. Calderon. She blinked once, then again. Her smile evaporated. A few people noticed. A co-worker, Dina, leaned in and said, "Wait, that name sounds incredibly familiar." My wife waved her off. "It's a common name," she lied. But her eyes were already scanning the dense print once more. She reread the name. She whispered it aloud this time. Calderon. Then, something shifted. A fragment of a memory. A story she had once heard. Something about a law firm in Austin. A high-profile case from years ago. Whispered rumors or old headlines. She couldn't be sure. Her fingers darted to her phone. She Googled the name. The first result, Victoria Calderon, the divorce architect of the ultra-rich. Second, the woman who financially disappeared a senator, and his wife thanked her for it. Third, why CEOs fear Victoria Calderon more than their mistresses. Her screen seemed to freeze for a moment, perhaps from all the fingerprint smudges, or perhaps from pure panic. She wiped it quickly on her blouse. She scrolled again. The fourth result was a link to a podcast, Surgical Separations, the Victoria Calderon Method. She clicked the link. She listened for only 30 seconds. You don't win a legal battle by shouting. You win with silence. You allow them to underestimate you, and then you take away every single thing they value. Legally, permanently, and without ever raising your voice. She stopped the playback. Her hand was now trembling. This wasn't some local, accessible lawyer. This wasn't even a regional boutique firm. This was the same Victoria who once relentlessly cornered a celebrity chef in court so effectively that he surrendered custody of 3 restaurants just to avoid cross-examination. The same one who had filed 16 separate court orders in a single day across 5 states to freeze hidden assets in less time than it takes to fly between them. And now, she was representing me. She reread the papers again, the laughter now completely gone. Every clause suddenly felt loaded, expertly weaponized. Her own smug words about me, safe, boring, he'll never leave, screamed like blaring alarms inside her head. The filing date was already backdated. "I need to call my idiot husband," she muttered. Her coworkers chuckled nervously, but Dina, the thoughtful one, noticed her quiet departure. Dina had once been a paralegal in D.C. She knew that name, and she wasn't laughing at all. On Thursday morning, she tried to buy her usual espresso at her favorite pretentious cafe, the one that served coffee in glass jars and made you feel guilty for existing. The barista swiped her card twice, then held it up like a piece of garbage. "Sorry, it's not going through." She blinked. "That's impossible. Try it again." Another beep. Another error message. She pulled out her phone and opened her banking app, still forcing a smile, as if it were a simple technical glitch. The login worked perfectly, but the numbers were terrifyingly wrong. Her checking account, which usually hovered easily in 5 figures, now showed a total balance of $12.14. Her savings account read, "Pending hold." She frantically refreshed the screen. It was still there, still empty. She abandoned the untouched glass jar of coffee and rushed to her car, her heels clattering frantically like a drum roll of disaster. 2 minutes later, she was on the phone with her lawyer, a guy named Jeff, golf-tanned, 40-something, with a firm, meaningless handshake and absolutely no killer instinct. She had hired him precisely because of his accessibility, meaning he always told her exactly what she wanted to hear. "Not today." "I don't understand what the hell is going on," she barked the instant he answered. "My accounts are frozen. My card was just declined in public." She expected sympathy for the in public part. Instead, she got hesitation, followed by something far worse, a small, panicked stutter. Well, I was just about to call you. We received something unusual this morning from opposing counsel. It's a motion for a full forensic review of all marital and premarital assets. It was filed with what I can only describe as speed." She frowned. "Speed? As in what?" "As in, she has already secured third-party audit reports. She's flagged 6 accounts I didn't even know existed. She's also submitted transaction histories from 2 credit cards that you failed to disclose on your original intake form." Her mouth opened, then slowly closed. "Those were mine," she said, her voice slow and fragile. "Personal from before. That's off limits, right?" Jeff didn't answer immediately. Then came the defeated sigh. Not if they were used at all during the marriage. Especially not if marital funds commingled with them. "What? No. That's absurd. That card was for shoes. My own private purchases." Jeff cleared his throat. "There was a Louis Vuitton charge 5 months ago. It perfectly matches a debit withdrawal from the joint account 2 days prior. That constitutes a significant problem." "Shoes," she yelled, her voice breaking. "We are arguing over a pair of shoes." "No," he said dryly. "Now we are arguing about commingled funds and strategic intent. And I must be honest with you. The woman representing your husband is exceptionally good. The kind of good that makes judges raise an eyebrow and other lawyers consider early retirement." A cold, sinking feeling hit her chest. "You know her?" "Everyone knows her, Christine," Jeff said, suddenly sounding much more like an intimidated paralegal than a seasoned litigator. "She represented a crypto billionaire who got married in Bali and then divorced across 6 countries. She liquidated 14 shell companies in 2 weeks without a single trace. Her nickname is the Black Widow of Westlake." She gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white. Are you honestly exaggerating? I am, he said, his voice dropping lower. Because she is also Brent Mix's wife. Everything stopped. Her heart literally stuttered. Brent. She hadn't heard that name in almost 3 years. Not since that drunken night she tried to reconnect with him after our fight. The night I slept on the sofa, and she told me I wasn't a man anymore. Her voice was suddenly bone dry. That Victoria? Yes, that Victoria. And just like that, everything clicked into place. The strange, nervous look on her sister's face. The tense, knowing tone in her friend Dina's voice. The cold, bloodless, calculated nature of the legal documents. It wasn't spiteful or reactive. It was thorough. It was strategic. She wasn't fighting me anymore. She was now up against her. Her smart, manipulative, smug mind couldn't even begin to process the shift, because this was no longer a petty fight to win. This was a full-scale, devastating rebalancing of all power. No more guilt leverage. No more, you'll never do better. No more, I control the narrative. Victoria held the narrative now. And Victoria didn't do drama. She did damage. She heard the doorbell from the kitchen but didn't bother to wipe her hands. She let the olive oil drip. She let the burner continue to smoke. It was probably the delivery service again, dropping off more certified letters she wouldn't open. But when she yanked the door open, it wasn't a stranger with a clipboard. It was Tissa. And Tissa looked like she had driven there in a reckless panic. Her hair pulled back less as a style and more as a sign of extreme stress. Her heels were clutched under one arm, and her eyes held a desperate mix of pleading and accusation. Oh, for God's sake. You, too, she grumbled, turning back toward the kitchen without offering an invitation inside. Can I just have one day when everyone doesn't act like I've committed a homicide? Tissa walked in anyway. I don't care what you said or did, she announced, closing the door behind her. I care about what is fundamentally about to happen to you. My wife scoffed. What is going to happen? He's going to cry himself to sleep on some cheap rented mattress? He's going to call his mother? What, Tissa? She grabbed a towel and began drying her hands, then froze as Tissa slammed a thick envelope onto the kitchen island. Open it. She just stared at the folder. Tissa remained motionless. Open it now. With an exaggerated, put-upon sigh, she ripped open the top, expecting more worthless legal junk mail. Instead, a cascade of account summaries spilled out. Joint accounts, individual accounts, even one she had opened under her maiden name last year. All were flagged with dates, red highlights, and attached motions. What in the hell is this? Asset tracing, Tissa said flatly. It's what competent lawyers do when they aren't wasting time posturing in court. Victoria has already filed preemptive liens on all marital property and requested a deep forensic review of everything you've touched in the last 3 years. Her laugh was brittle and hollow. That's not even legal. This is absurd overkill. Tissa's face hardened. No, this is Victoria being polite for now. A long silence followed, broken only by the soft, persistent hiss of something starting to burn on the stovetop. My wife ignored it. Instead, she pointed a finger at the file. He is absolutely not going to go through with this. He has never followed through on anything difficult in his entire life. He gets upset, he sulks, and then he completely gives in. Tissa took a slow step closer. And maybe that was always the case, until you pushed him just one step too far. Until you made the one profound mistake that even your manipulations couldn't clean up. My wife crossed her arms defensively. What? Saying Brent was better? Are you being serious? Everyone says terrible things when they're angry. He knew I didn't mean it. Tissa didn't break eye contact. He knew. Another beat of silence. Then, softer, Tissa added. Why do you think I chased after him outside the hotel? Why do you think I actually begged him not to do this? That finally got her full attention. What did you say? Tissa nodded slowly. I saw them together in the hotel bar. He wasn't weeping. He wasn't drinking. He wasn't falling apart. He was planning. She was handing him a folder. He looked like a man who had already made total peace with the devastating thing he was about to execute. He's bluffing, she insisted, mostly to herself. It's a scare tactic. I know him inside and out. You didn't know him, Tissa countered firmly. You knew the version of him who desperately wanted to be loved. The version you mercilessly ridiculed until he completely forgot what trust felt like. You have no idea who this new version is. My wife shook her head sharply. He's not going to ruin me. That lawyer is just deeply resentful because I used to date her husband. You didn't date him, Tissa corrected. You slept with him repeatedly behind his then-girlfriend's back, behind Victoria's back. And now, she's not just resentful. She's fundamentally motivated. She sat down abruptly, as if the sheer weight of that sentence had finally crushed her spine. Tissa let the truth hang in the air for a moment before she continued. You truly don't get it. That woman never loses. She doesn't stop. The last poor guy who tried to outmaneuver her ended up bankrupt and was permanently ousted from his own foundation. She doesn't seek revenge. She demands complete control. And once she establishes it, she never, ever gives it back. My wife looked away, saying nothing. Do you truly think this can still be fixed? You are wrong, Tissa said. You made this irreversible, and you did it out loud for him to hear. Still no response. Only the quiet, irritating beep of the stove alarm. Tissa sighed and reached over to turn it off. I sincerely hope you manage to save something for yourself, she said quietly. Because by the time she is finished, you won't even own the kitchen you are standing in right now. Tissa then left the envelope on the counter, turned, and walked out the door. My wife didn't move, didn't call after her, didn't stop her at all. The first clue was the silence in the group chat, the one she called the weekend crew. These were the same friends who used to bombard her phone with brunch ideas, Pilates memes, and an endless stream of gossip about everyone else's marriages. Now nothing. For solid days of absolute radio silence. She sent a picture of herself in a new summer dress, a glass of white wine in hand, captioned, "Sun and peace, kiss lemon print." Not a single person replied, not even a pity like. She stared at the screen, baffled, then clicked on their names one by one. No one had actually left the chat. They simply weren't engaging. She scrolled up through older conversations, past the flirty girls-only selfies and the passive-aggressive digs at their husbands, many of which she had orchestrated. Then she noticed something odd. Someone had completely deleted a comment from 3 nights ago, a gif she had sent joking about men being disposable. It was gone, as if it had never existed. She posted an old throwback story on Instagram. She tagged 3 of them. Still nothing. Then came the moment that escalated her anxiety from a mild irritation to something cold and instinctive. Lunch with April. Or at least, that's what she thought it was. They met at a place they frequented after their bar class. Large windows, overpriced salads, and waiters expertly trained to treat every customer like a minor celebrity. April arrived 10 minutes late, wearing sunglasses, and barely offered a hello. Something was deeply, profoundly wrong. April sat down opposite her, refusing to remove the glasses. She ordered only water, no food. She started with a throwaway comment. "So, how's everything going?" My wife forced a practiced smile. "Apparently, I married the most dramatic man on the planet. I make a single, casual comment, and now he's gone into full-on Lifetime movie mode." April didn't laugh. She offered a polite nod, sipped her water, and then said dryly, "You know he hired Victoria Calderon, right?" The forced smile fractured. "Who?" April finally pushed the sunglasses up onto her head. "Come on, you know perfectly well. The Black Widow. The one who managed to turn a Senate re-election campaign into a major divorce scandal. The one who completely wiped out a tech CEO's entire board seat with a single, perfectly leaked deposition." My wife blinked slowly. "Those are just tabloid stories." "No," April said calmly. "Those are actual results. She doesn't just process divorces. She legally destroys credibility." Another silence. April stood up to leave. "I just wanted to check on you. But off the record, I would strongly advise you to stop posting anything. Anything public becomes legal evidence. That is her entire specialty." Then she was gone. No hug, no lingering warmth, just immediate distance. My wife sat there for a full 10 minutes, the salad untouched, until the waiter silently cleared the plate without asking a word. That night, she checked her direct messages. 2 more friends had silently unfollowed her. One of them, Aaron, was the best man at their wedding. Even her cousin had removed her from a shared Pinterest board ironically titled, "Dream Vacations." Initially, she rationalized that they were simply afraid of being caught in the middle. She told herself that people always disappear when legal conflicts get serious, that they were simply trying to be polite. But the true, terrifying realization came the following afternoon. A phone call from Brent. Yes, that Brent, her ex, the man she had so confidently called 10 times more of a man than me. He never called. Not after she tried to drunk text him that one night she felt nostalgic. Not even after Victoria had sent her a single period and then immediately blocked her number. But now he was calling. She answered. "Brent." His voice was low, heavy with discomfort. "Look, I absolutely do not want to get involved in any of this." "Then why are you calling me?" she asked. A pause. "Because I heard what you said to your husband about me, and I think you need to know something critically important." She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "What? Are you planning to defend him now?" "No," Brent said firmly. "I'm calling to warn you. Do not mess with Victoria. You are not going to win this fight. She is not vengeful. She is surgical. She is not angry. She is calm. And that is exactly when you should be terrified. Why do you even care about this?" "I don't," he admitted. "But I've seen her prepare for a trial. To her, you are not a human being. You are an equation, and she is terrifyingly good at subtraction." He hung up abruptly before she could manage a response. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, she didn't feel like the one in control of the story. She felt like the loose thread, and she realized someone had already started to pull it relentlessly. The package was surprisingly small. No corporate logo, no courier label, just a flat, padded envelope tucked between the junk mail and a coupon flyer for car detailing. No return address, no sender name, just her name, neatly typewritten, not handwritten, on a clean white label, as if it had been prepared weeks, maybe months, in advance. She opened it at the kitchen counter with the same fingers that used to scroll through high-end shopping apps and immediately delete urgent bank warnings. Now those same fingers trembled slightly, hesitating before opening a flap she already knew would not contain good news. Inside, there was a single item, a USB stick. Nothing else, no note, no instructions, just the unmistakable, terrifying weight of a pending account made entirely portable. She stood there for almost 20 minutes, staring at it as though it might detonate. Then she slowly, carefully walked to her laptop, plugged it in, and waited for the familiar chime of recognition. Untitled file. She double-clicked. The screen went black for a second, then opened onto a visual that was so familiar it churned her stomach. Their dining room, dimly lit exactly as it had been that night. The candles were still flickering in the background. Her half-drunk wine glass. Her body reclined confidently in the chair, legs crossed, the smug smile on her face already visible before she even uttered the fateful words. You know, my ex was 10 times the man you'll ever be. It was the exact, preserved moment. She blinked rapidly. Her hand instinctively moved to close the screen, but it froze as the video continued past the point her own memory recalled. At least he made me feel something. Her voice slurred with a toxic mix of alcohol and performance. You're just safe. Predictable. You will never actually leave me. I don't have to put in any effort with you. She stared at the screen, her breath hitching somewhere between her throat and her lungs. Then came the absolute silence in the recording. A long, drawn-out pause. She remembered that pause. At the time, it had felt awkward, a sign that she might have gone a little too far. But now it played back with a horrific clarity she hadn't anticipated, because after a few tense seconds, his voice finally came through the speakers. Noted. That was the entirety of his response. Just that single word, and the way he delivered it. Not with pain, not with surprise, not with confusion, with calculation. She leaned back slowly, a cold, heavy pressure building at the base of her spine. The way her name was formally printed on the envelope. The exact time stamp on the video. The camera angle, it wasn't from a shaky handheld phone. It was a fixed, static recording. He had recorded it deliberately, not as a desperately wounded man seeking later sympathy, but as undeniable, planned evidence. She remained motionless for a long time after the video ended. Her reflection in the laptop screen stared back. No makeup, no audience, just her face, completely hollowed out by the echo of her own past arrogance. She slowly closed the lid. She tried to take a deep breath, but something wouldn't allow it. It wasn't the exposure, or even the betrayal. It was the certainty, the chilling, absolute realization that he hadn't just left her. He had systematically dismantled her, not with rage or shouting, but with one single, icy word. Noted. Because he knew, even then, it had already begun. That moment, that humiliating night, wasn't the beginning of his reaction. It was the day he started writing his final conclusion. And now, the final chapter was published. The very last time she saw him was not at their house. Not in the kitchen where she used to practice her little monologues about how real men should act. Not in the bedroom where she once rolled over mid-argument and muttered that he was simply too sensitive to be a grown man. No, the last time she saw him was outside a large, impersonal courthouse. It was mid-morning, with a crisp, still air. He was sitting on a concrete bench beneath an old, spreading oak tree, his tie slightly loosened, his elbows resting calmly on his knees. He looked quiet, complete, not smugly triumphant, not furious, just simply finished. She almost didn't recognize him, not because of any major change in his appearance, but because something fundamental was absent from his face. That faint, underlying desperation that used to cloud his eyes every time she raised her voice. That frantic need to somehow fix everything she broke. It was gone. She clutched her file folder like a child holding incomplete homework she knows she'll be punished for. Her shoes sounded too loud on the pavement. Every footstep seemed like an unheard apology she could never quite speak. I didn't mean any of it, she whispered, moving closer. Still no response. I was drunk. You know I just say awful things when. She stopped. Even she couldn't maintain the lie anymore. He remained utterly still, his gaze fixed straight ahead, as if she were nothing more than a minor part of the surrounding landscape. That's when Victoria materialized, as she always seemed to. Perfect, unruffled posture, no papers in hand, just a thin white envelope sealed with the kind of meticulous wax seal usually reserved for high-end wealth management or inherited estates. Victoria did not speak to her at all. She simply held out the envelope, presenting it like an immutable verdict. The wife hesitated before taking it, as if she feared her fingers might burn upon contact. She slowly broke the seal, her eyes flickering back and forth between Victoria's utterly unreadable expression and her husband's profound indifference. Inside was the final divorce decree, signed, fully executed, and filed. All major assets, the house, the stocks, the remaining retirement funds, were awarded to him. The complete separation of all property had been legally executed retroactively through complex trust mechanisms dating back 6 years. A strict non-disparagement clause was required for all platforms and in-person statements. Penalty for any breach, 6 figures per incident. The very last line hit her harder than any other clause. Executed with full consent. She squinted at the phrase. It didn't just mean he had agreed to the severe terms. It meant she had, too. Somewhere, buried deep within the stack of legal documents she had barely glanced at while smiling at her inept lawyer, she had signed. She had fully consented to this. Every single part of it. He hadn't trapped her. She had walked in to sneer, crossed her arms, and unwittingly filed for her own precise, total destruction. She looked up, her voice small and entirely broken. Is this truly final now? Victoria tilted her head. It's been final for quite some time, actually. You simply hadn't caught up with the reality yet. Then she turned to him. I'll meet you inside. The judge is signing the closing order in 15 minutes. She walked away, her heels silent and surgical, as always. The wife stood there, gazing at him, desperately trying to locate the version of him she could still manipulate with guilt or provoke with anger. That version was entirely gone. You don't even hate me, she whispered quietly. No response. And somehow, that chilling indifference was infinitely worse than hate. Hate still acknowledges your existence. This was a razor-sharp erasure. She turned to walk away, slowly, unsteadily, the envelope clutched in her hand like a death certificate. The wind suddenly picked up behind her, scattering a few dry leaves across the wide courthouse steps. She didn't look back. She knew exactly what she would see. A man she had never respected, now calmly possessing everything she had just lost, and the quiet, elegant grace of the woman who had ruined her life. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments.